Here we go with the first pack. We have an Arrest as the best card, followed by Annihilating Fire, and there might be a white spell coming around, although this pack is pretty empty. If the Hussar Patrol is getting picked, then we know that there's at least another Azorius drafter at the table, but we probably can't deduce too much from this pack. Next up, we're getting past a very good Celestia Mythic Rare. Trostani is almost unbeatable, and I'm wondering what the person to our right picked instead, but that's a great follow-up. This pack doesn't offer too much for us, but with the second pick Trostani, we really want to force Celestia, I feel like, and it's either Keening Apparition or Drudge Beetle. And I'm going to take Keening Apparition to protect my own Arrest, and because I'm just more inclined to pick a white card now. One of the reasons for that is also that you are usually need more white sources to cast your Sunspire Griffins, and then it's easier if you also have more white cards overall. Saddle of Songbirds is better than Drudge Beetle. The fact that we already have a Populate spell makes it an easy pick. I think that Saddle of Songbirds is actually quite underrated, and I like to have it in my deck whenever I'm playing white, basically. Next up, we have the decision between Concordia Pegasus and Chorus of Might, and Concordia Pegasus is a fine 2-drop. We can always pick up combat tricks in Celestia later, and until we know if we are going to be a Populate or a combat trick deck that's more aggressive and less reliant on tokens, I'm going to pick the Pegasus, another card that I feel is a little underrated. Here we have the option to pick up a Vessel Soul or go with Giant Growth instead, and I've come to like Giant Growth quite a bit. I think it's almost like a removal spell, and it's much better than Vessel Soul in my experience. So happy to take that. Basically forcing myself into green-white now, but if the person to my right is giving me a Trostani, I expect him to not be in green-white at all, and I think it's powerful enough to do that. Here we see an 8th pick Centaur Healer, which I'm just going to take immediately. Much better than Swift Justice for us. Also some nice blue cards, so it looks like being in Bund is just where we want to be. Maybe the person to our right is playing Rakdos. It's possible that he first picked a Stab Wound, or maybe an Augur Spree, but it still seems weird to pass a Trostani, because it's just so dominant once you untap with it. Here, Heroes Reunion is not a card I really want to play, but I'm going to take the green-white card anyway. And Hussar Patrol actually tabled, which means that people are picking Ethereal Armor higher than Hussar Patrol, or aren't in Azorius but in Celestia, but we can't really change anything about that. I still feel that Hussar Patrol is more of a threat than the Skywatch, although we could splash the Skywatch. I'm hoping to not have to splash anything in my Return to Ravnica decks, usually. And here we are just going to pick a Cancel, most powerful blue card, and it looks like the remaining packs aren't going to be that exciting, although Downsize has been quite good for me several times already. Next up, we have another insane pack with Pack Red, Knightly Valor, Stab Wound, Annihilating Fire, Dramatic Rescue, also Azorius Keyrune and Soulsworn Spirit, all not that bad. So for us, it would probably be Knightly Valor at this point, but I'm just going to take the Pack Red and maybe splash it, maybe just take it so I don't have to play against it. Especially with a white-green or white blue deck, there's almost no way to handle a pack rat, so I'm quite happy to take it out of the pack here. Now, Mercurial Chemist are also a card I don't want to face, but that's much harder to justify picking because I'm basically it's basically impossible for me to play it myself. So I think that Gatecreeper Vine, Fencing Ace are two options that are much more likely to become relevant. Golgari Longlegs and Armory Guard are also fine. So the question is if, well, Fencing Ace is the easy pick because I would just continue picking white cards. Gatecreeper Vine allows me to splash pack red more effectively, which could be quite relevant. And if I can play it, I'm going to, even though it doesn't come down on turn 2 in my deck. And yeah, the Gatecreeper Vine just seems like the best choice for me. If the Armory Guard or the Longlegs tables, I will be happy to play them. But here, picking the mana fixing sounds like a good idea. Not the biggest fan of X-Bane Guardian, but Golgari Guildgate looks like the right card to combine with Gatecreeper Vine in order to splash pack red. And it's also a black source I can play on turn 1, which is important if we want to pack red on turn 2. Now, this doesn't look all that amazing. There isn't any token making to be found in all of these packs, so Trostani is losing some of its value. I think I can also hide the blue. It's just looking like we are a Selesnya deck splashing pack red. And then the question is if Grizzly Salvage is any good. I don't think so, because you don't want to go search for pack red, you just want to draw it. And the decision is really between a second Pegasus and Stonefair Crocodile here. The fact that we can't make the Crocodile larger makes me want to have a second Pegasus, and then hopefully we can pick up a Knightly Valor or two. Here we have a Selesnya Key Rune that might be quite good. We can use some fixing, and it is a 3/3 at some point. That I feel that's more important than the other cards in this pack. Now, a Selesnya Guildgate is competing with Swift Justice and Towering Indrik, both cards that aren't bad, but we already have two Pegasus, and I don't really see a reason to have the reach creature. I'm going to go with the Guildgate to make my mana as good as possible. And this might be the time to pick up a Vessel Soul. We could splash the Trestle Troll in addition to the pack red, but I don't know if that's what we want to be doing. Now, Vessel Soul is basically another double white spell, whereas Trestle Troll needs us to have the black. However, given that my creatures all have only one power, I'm kind of relying on my rares to take over the game, so I think that Trestle Troll might actually be the pick here. Let's try that and see how it goes. I might just pick the Populate spell here rather than hate draft something. Soul Tithe is not a card I really like all that much, so let's pick that. And one Horncaller's Chant can't be too bad when you have a Trostani, so I want to have one in my deck. Seek the Horizon might actually make the deck, but I doubt it. Let's see if we can populate a pack red token at some point during this draft. That would be pretty cool. Next up, we have an Epic Experiment that's not going to be good in our deck. Treasured Find is pretty slow. Longlegs are great, but don't know if that's what our deck wants to do primarily. Kind of like Giant Growth as another pseudo removal spell, and as a way for our defensive creatures to actually survive in combat. And I think that's better than picking up a long legs. There's also a Combond, which I don't like as much as I used to. Somehow it's pretty clunky and it's much easier to make good use of giant growth, I feel like. So going to pick that, and can't say that I'm not pleased about that. Here we get a Trostani's Judgment, and that's very important to get some hard removal. Also some powerful cards that are not in our colors, but very happy to pick that up. And here we could pick up a Growing Ranks, but we are also already in pack 3 and we only have pack red, a Seller of Songbirds to make, and Horncoller's Chant to make tokens. And we already have the Populate on Trostani, so I think that Growing Ranks is probably not the card that we want in our deck. It might be Centaur Healer, but I feel it's just Trostani's Judgment because we are developing into a control deck that wants as many ways to remove troublesome creatures as possible. Now that's a late Sunspire Griffin, which I would love to have, but Centaur's Herald and Cursor's Accord are also very good, and they work together with our Populate theme. So I feel like having the Centaur's Herald is probably more important to make our deck run more smoothly. Now a second Gatecreeper Vine or a second Druid's Deliverance are the options, I feel like. And I'm not going to play two of these because our Populate theme is only a minor thing. But I will play two Gatecreeper Vines simply because of pack red. And a second Selesnya Guildgate is a fine pickup. Now this is another Combond, which means that we might have to pick it now. It does have to be better than Avenging Arrow, I feel like. Rootborn Defenses or Golgari Guildgate. I really like Rootborn Defenses, but my creatures are all kind of weak. And for Populating I can also play a Druid's Deliverance, which I don't even know if I'm going to. Actually going to just play the Guildgate, make it more likely to drop the pack rats on time. And we do get a long legs after all. Let's just take out the Static Caster, pick up a sideboard card, and now we are basically ready to play. That's one of the latest teleportals I've ever seen, and it shouldn't be in there. So I feel like this shouldn't be too difficult. Don't actually have that many gold cards, but that's not a bad thing. Or it doesn't have to be a bad thing, let's put it that way. Now, this is only 22 cards, and we don't want to play 18 lands and 2 Gatecreeper Vines, so we do have some more cards to put in. Now, of course, the Guild Gates are all being played, and looking at Aerial Predation, Druid's Deliverance as our remaining options. Now, having one Aerial Predation is almost always going to be good, and I kind of like the idea of having more Populate spells, but to be honest, we just don't have that many cards that make tokens in the first place. So I feel like Druid's Deliverance is just not going to be good enough in the main deck. Aerial Predation, on the other hand, is going to be quite helpful. Now, the interesting thing is that if we play 17 lands, we basically have the 2 Gatecreeper Vines and the Key Rune as additional mana sources. So it would be a 20 mana sources deck, which is actually too much, but given that we have a pack red, it might not be that bad to have a few more lands than we actually need. Given that our alternative is to play a fog effect that might copy a creature at some point, but doesn't necessarily have to, I think that 17 lands is much safer than going for only 16. Now, I do want one swamp in this deck to fetch it and play it untapped with the help of Gatecreeper Vine, but then we have more than enough black sources, and I'm just going to try to make the green and white sources kind of evenly distributed. So 27 and one swamp is 28. That leaves us with 12 remaining lands, and 4 of our lands already produce green, 2 of them produce white. So if we play 7 plains, that's 9 sources. If we play 5 forests, that's also 9 sources. And the reason, and because we have 4 guild gates, it means that it's very likely that we can drop a guild gate on turn 1 and not lose any tempo because of it. So having only 5 untapped forests isn't that big of a deal. This looks like a very interesting deck, and that could actually be quite powerful, but it doesn't have to be. I'm not really sure. So let's see how it goes.